So JJK Season 2 might be over, and a lot sooner than the majority of us anticipated. See, for those of you scratching your head over this statement as you believe that JJK Season 2 is nowhere near its logical end, you would be right. JJK Season 2 is nowhere near its logical end. In fact, as I'm filming this Wednesday, November 15th, there are only 16 episodes out of Season 2 of JJK. Of the planned 23 to 24, I don't exactly remember how many they were planning on doing in Season 2, which would put us somewhere in the ballpark of 8 episodes short of the end of Season 2. So why am I now talking about JJK Seasons 2 coming to a close 8 episodes early? And well, it's not because the anime has decided to diverge from the manga's course, or even because JJK is just no longer doing well, and therefore they've decided to can the project and not finish off Season 2. In fact, the public reception of JJK Season 2 has been overwhelmingly positive, with it being the #1 anime on Earth, with really the only anime even coming close to it competition-wise being One Piece. And really, when you're talking about #1 anime or manga, you just have to assume that it's usually going to be One Piece. First place is second place to One Piece. So why is this anime that is doing overwhelmingly positive ending so soon? Well, the answer isn't all that simple, but I can break it down in a couple of key points for you. Long hours, no breaks, and no respect. Yes, that's right. We, for the first time in MAPPA's history, are finally en masse getting reports about what it's like to work inside of MAPPA, which usually would constitute a breach of contract. As the reason that we've never really gotten a look into what a day at MAPPA looks like is because any and all people who go to work for MAPPA have to sign a ridiculous amount of NDAs to never talk about the projects they're working on or the working conditions they're being subjected to. However, a couple of brave employees within the confines of MAPPA have taken to either Reddit or Twitter to tell the public just how terrible working conditions truly are. And thus, as these reports continue to stream out of MAPPA, one of the biggest animation studios on Earth, we, as the uninformed public, are finally beginning to realize that the memes we've made about MAPPA animators not seeing their families might be a lot more true than we ever hoped. And it might appear as though those memes coming to life could spell the end for JJK's second season. Maybe even more than that, spell the end for one of anime's biggest animation studios. This is without a doubt one of the biggest stories that I've ever covered in any form of social media. And there is a lot to get into, so let's get into it. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. If you want to hear me do breakdowns of some of the anime world's biggest news, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. This news very much included. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to look like somebody who's up to date on all things anime news, guys, go ahead and meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, the biggest anime with the largest amount of spectacle currently animating its most important season is now facing an indefinite hiatus. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, Season 2 of JJK, the Shibuya incident, one of the most important things to happen in anime and manga in the last decade, may not see the end of its animation run. But why is that? Well, the blame lies with separate parties, depending on who you ask. Some would say that the blame lies with MAPPA's top brass, while others would say that it lies with Toho and Shueisha, while others would say that the blame falls directly into the lap of the animators speaking out. And today, I want to give you all of the information that you need to know about this possible conclusion to JJK's second season, and then give you my opinion on what's gone wrong. So let's first address the facts. Multiple people who have been working on JJK's second season for MAPPA have taken to either Reddit or Twitter to complain about MAPPA's working conditions, with people like one of the main animators of JJK, a man by the name of Kato, tweeting in a now deleted tweet, "I'll leave you with one word. Scum." With another animator of JJK's second season by the name of Honey sending tweets complaining about the production of the important show he's currently working on, which is JJK's second season. With other key animators like Shinjiro Igawa sending out cryptic tweets like "throw out your key card on the way to the company parking lot," referring to Shinjiro's want to quit MAPPA on the way out the door. And these are not the only animators within MAPPA that are complaining about their current work conditions. In fact, close to 10 animators have either directly spoken out against MAPPA or simply reposted or retweeted tweets or posts about how working at MAPPA is awful. But where does this come from? I mean, we've all known the meme that working at MAPPA is like signing away away your life. But why is it bubbling over now? Well, it's been revealed to us that Season 2 of JJK has been a ridiculous grind over at MAPPA, with episodes getting done mere hours before their airing date in Japan. And while finishing a production like a web novel or a manga hours before its posting time is not unheard of, in the case of anime, that is much rarer, as a web novel or a manga is usually only worked on by 1, 2, or maybe 3 people, but an anime is worked on by dozens of people working collaboratively to try and get the episode done as quickly and as well as possible. And thus animation studios finishing an episode merely hours before its posting date is very rare. And with this being a problem in MAPPA over the last couple of weeks, and animators feeling burnout over having to try and get these episodes done as quickly as possible, because if they're not done by the time that the airing date happens, then MAPPA loses a bunch of money, pressure has been mounting in MAPPA to a level at which the animators believe is no longer sustainable. See, because I don't know if you guys have ever done the pacer test, but you know when you're running the pacer test and in the first couple of laps, you're doing all right, and you'll get to the line and you'll have 7 seconds to catch your breath and you'll be good. But then slowly but surely you get to the line with 6 seconds left, 5 seconds left, 4, 3, 2, until eventually you're just barely getting to the line before the next run starts. That's basically what's happening at MAPPA currently. When you turn in an episode 3 hours before it's supposed to air, you have no more time to rest before you need to start on the next episode. Because mind you, the animators at MAPPA are pretty much starting the episodes that you see 7 days before you see them. However, in the beginning of the season, they might have started an episode 2 weeks before it aired, or 10 days before it aired, until eventually that start date got shaved away and shaved away and shaved away until they're starting the next episode the second the last one airs. And thus, MAPPA animators requested a delay from the production committee at MAPPA. And the reason that all of these MAPPA animators and some directors are taking to Twitter and Reddit to talk about how terrible MAPPA is because MAPPA said no. Instead of acknowledging the fact that they are falling behind on production of JJK, they simply told the animators, suck it up. The show goes on. Which raises the incredibly logical question, why would they do that? If a group of your employees are looking at you and saying that we can't continue to make this product at the level of quality that you want, and your only answer to that plea is, I don't know, figure it out, why would you choose that answer? Well, the answer to that question, and so many other questions, is money. See, the people who sit on the production committee at MAPPA aren't only just MAPPA top brass. In fact, it's a smattering of top brass from places like Toho, Shueisha, and MAPPA. And in order for something like a delay to be approved, the production committee needs a majority vote to delay. However, if they were to delay, Toho, Shueisha, and MAPPA would take some pretty serious hits, cost-wise. Because let's assume that they delay Season 2 of JJK another 6 weeks. This would mean in a couple weeks' time, they would have to re-market JJK's re-release, which means even more money goes into marketing JJK's second season, which takes out of their dividends. On top of this, they have already bought the time slots to air JJK in Japan. So not only would they lose those time slots, but assuming they restart up in another 6 weeks, 6 weeks from now, they would have to buy a bunch of new time slots. And thus money is involved with delaying JJK even by 1 week. But it may not be up to the production committee. See, because if there's nobody to animate your story, then your story doesn't get animated. And that might be the impasse that MAPPA is currently looking at. See, the denial of this delay might have been the straw that broke the camel's back at MAPPA. Because now, not only are animators taking to the internet to complain about MAPPA, which is all but assured that they'll no longer work there since they've now broken their NDA, but directors, specifically directors of JJK's second season, have taken to Twitter to tweet about what's going on at MAPPA, and it's not good. In fact, one of the directors, Okubo Shunsuke, a director of episode 12 of JJK's second season, tweeted an image of one of the main characters of an anime known as Shirobako, which is an anime about making anime. And this main character from Shirobako is an animator trying to complete an anime. And in the photo tweeted by this director of JJK's second season, the animator is attempting to hang herself. But this isn't the only director who's taken to Twitter to reveal some not so great news. As Arai Kazuto, the director of episode 13, tweeted, and I'm gonna read it, "Bad news has arrived and I'm suddenly overwhelmed. The most boring ending I can think of. The festival is over. Yes. Disbanded. Which leads us to believe that whether the production committee wants to or not, JJK Season 2 has been delayed. In fact, animator-director Roshia Nobili tweeted, "It's over." However, that tweet has now been deleted. So to say that the future of JJK Season 2 is up in the air currently isn't much of a stretch. In fact, to say that the future of MAPPA as an animation studio is up in the air currently isn't much of a stretch. See, because it looks as though we're looking at a production halt either prior to episode 17 or directly after it. You see, there are a lot of animators who work at MAPPA, and maybe not all of them are either quitting or tweeting about how terrible it is. And a lot of this information is either coming out today, Wednesday, or yesterday, Tuesday. And considering the fact that JJK's episode comes out in about 24 hours, there's a possibility that episode 17 will be completed. However, there's an even bigger possibility that after episode 17, we won't see an episode 18. So what does this mean for the future of JJK's second season, and who's to blame? Is it MAPPA's fault? Is it Toho and Shueisha's fault? Or is it the fault of the directors and animators calling out MAPPA? Well, I'll tell you whose fault it isn't. The directors and animators calling out MAPPA. And I'll tell you whose fault it is. MAPPA's top brass. Over the last year, we've seen a wave of unionizations in America. Whether it be SAG or AFTRA, the United Auto Workers, people have been coming together in order to make sure that their rights as workers are unalienable and recognized. Because every person, regardless of the job they're working, deserves not only a livable wage, but also livable work environment. Now, unfortunately, that's only really been happening in America. I mean, it happens in Europe all of the time, but that's because they believe in workers' rights over there, and we're kind of just starting to figure it out. However, if there's one place that this kind of thing simply does not happen, it's Japan. See, MAPPA is a relatively new animation studio, only being founded in 2011, and therefore in the animation world, they're kind of the new guy, as bigger and more well-established animation studios like Ufotable have been around since 2000, and Madhouse, which has been around since 1972. And thus MAPPA is trying to make a splash and trying to make a play to be the biggest animation studio in all of Japan, as MAPPA wants nothing more to be viewed as equals with animation studios like Ufotable and Madhouse in A1. And the way that they've gone about trying to garner this reputation is by taking as many projects as possible. And I mean as many projects as possible. Well, MAPPA started its run as an animation studio doing some lesser known anime. They've been finding massive success in terms of pitching themselves to animate certain manga by telling the manga creators that they are fast, cheap, and effective. And for all intents and purposes, they've been correct. MAPPA's turnaround time on entire seasons of anime is next to none. And when MAPPA's working on a project that they actually care about, their animation quality is also second to none. And while I'm not in the board meetings listening to how much MAPPA is selling this work for, you have to assume, because so many mangakas and production studios are going with MAPPA so consistently, that they have to be pretty cheap comparatively to the rest of the competition. And because MAPPA has shown time and time again that they can produce a high-level product faster than anybody else, they continuously win bid after bid after bid. And now, if you talk to any average anime fan and ask what their favorite animation studio is, there's a fair chance they would say MAPPA, as MAPPA has been responsible for some incredible adaptations. In fact, just since their opening in 2011, they've animated Kakegurui, Yuri on Ice, Attack on Titan's final season, Dororo, Vinland Saga, Banana Fish, God of High School, Yusuke, JJK, and Chainsaw Man. And I can guarantee if you're watching this video right now, you've seen at least 6 of those anime. Oh yeah, and I forgot, they did Hell's Paradise. Not to mention smaller, lesser known projects that they've worked on during that time like Pair of Resonance, Zombieland Saga, and Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill. And while the quality between different shows that MAPPA animates is definitely vastly varying depending on how much money that show is currently making them, as there is a massive difference in animation quality between the likes of Hell's Paradise and JJK, they are still animating all of these shows. And thus this massive workload held to the highest level of standard that MAPPA's trying to achieve, also under the premise of trying to get everything done as fast as possible, has come at the exchange of one thing and one thing alone: the health of their employees. See, because technically, if you handcuff your employees to their desk for a week straight, yeah, they could give you a pretty good product and they could get it done pretty quickly. And since you're not paying those employees overtime, even though they definitely are working overtime, you're also cutting costs, because what would take a standard animation studio 4 weeks to accomplish, you've now done in 1 week. Which means not only are you hitting your unrealistic deadlines, but you're also only paying for 1 week of work. Kind of a win-win if you don't care about the people working for you. It's like when people go to Egypt and revel at the fact that people were able to build the pyramids thousands of years ago. In fact, the concept is so mind-boggling to some people that they assume that the pyramids must have been made by aliens. The pyramids weren't made by aliens, they were made by slaves. And when you have an entirely disposable workforce comprised of people that you don't have to feed or give water to, yeah, things can get done. But is it the right thing to do? No. But then why? If the workload at MAPPA has been so overwhelmingly abundant for the last decade, are we just now hitting a breaking point? Well, because think about what's currently going on at MAPPA. MAPPA, over the course of the last year, have been animating two incredibly key projects. Two of, inarguably, their biggest and most profitable projects of all time. That being the final season of Attack on Titan, which they did a relatively good job with outside of their release schedule, and season 2 of JJK. Now, MAPPA's adaptation of season 1 of JJK skyrocketed to quickly become one of the most popular anime on Earth, with season 2 cementing it as most likely the most popular anime on Earth. And while season 2 of JJK is releasing, and in the Shibuya incident, the most important part of season 2 of JJK, the final hour-and-a-half long episode of Attack on Titan was released, and it looked really good. And thus MAPPA, over the course of the last couple of months, have been working on their biggest and most important projects ever. And thus, if there's ever been a time for tension to build up in MAPPA, it's right now. Because here's the thing, MAPPA put an insane amount of money into Chainsaw Man, and Chainsaw Man was not profitable. And while I know a lot of you are sitting here and saying, what? Chainsaw Man was wildly popular here in America. Not in Japan. Not to mention that Chainsaw Man looked so good that nobody felt the need to buy the Blu-ray of it. And Blu-ray sales are actually pretty much the only way that anime end up profitable. So one of the biggest projects that MAPPA has ever worked on, Chainsaw Man, ended up being kind of a flop, to such a degree that we may never even see a second season. So now MAPPA is in what they believe to be a monetary hole. A monetary hole that they feel the only way to climb out of is to A, accept more projects, and B, make sure that Attack on Titan and JJK are quite literally perfect. And do you accomplish that by hiring more animators to make sure that the project goes as smoothly as possible? Well, technically, you could, but that would cost you a lot of money. And remember, we're trying to dig out of a hole here, not deepen it. So what you do instead is hire a skeleton crew of incredibly talented animators. Animators who have worked on a myriad of some of your favorite animes of all time. Young, up-and-coming all-stars who knock every project they work on out of the park. And you tell these animators you're going to be working on some of the most important anime to ever be released. What a unique honor that is. By the way, episode 1 is due in 7 days. And these animators, excited to be working on these projects, get that done. But week after week, it begins to wear them down. And I'd like to set the precedent here that the average American, European, and Australian watching this video wouldn't last a week in the Japanese workforce. And not even just in a place like MAPPA. Work life in Japan is grueling. Long hours, years of shoveling shit until you can finally reach a level at which you can shovel shit onto somebody else, a system that makes young people entering the workforce basically the lackeys of anybody older than them, all propagated under the incredibly popular global fallacy that I went through it, so you have to too. In a place like MAPPA understands that people in Japan have just come to accept that this is life and this is work. And thus companies like MAPPA exploit this ideology and force people to work to the bone. And it's worked for a long time. In fact, JJK Season 2 is one of the most ambitious and beautiful animation projects I've ever seen. There are multiple, and I mean multiple, as in greater than 5 fights throughout Season 2 of JJK that would be the best fight in any other anime. Period. Gojo versus Toji, Geto versus Toji, Mechamaru versus Mahito, Gojo versus the Disaster Curses, Toji versus Dagon, Toji versus Megami, and most recently, Jogo versus Sukuna, which was one of the most gorgeous anime fights maybe ever. All of these fights in all of these episodes have been completed on the razor's edge, and yet somehow the product remains incredible. And that isn't because of MAPPA's top brass. That's because of the individual animator busting their ass to make sure that that episode stands in history as one of the greatest to exist. Period. When these episodes like MAPPA could just as easily look like the Naruto versus Pain fight. And if they did look like the Naruto versus Pain fight, the animators would have plenty of time off because these episodes would get done long before the deadline. But that isn't the level in which MAPPA aspires to. And that isn't the level at which the animators they hired function at. So if you're watching this video, preferably tomorrow on Thursday, and there isn't an episode 18 of JJK, do not blame the animators. This is, and forever will be, MAPPA, Toho, and Shueisha's fault. The individual animator who's calling out a vindictive and corrupt animation studio, forcing them to work overtime hours they're not paid for, is not in the wrong. In fact, what they're doing is incredibly brave, and I hope that it starts a movement. Because for a long time in Japan, animators have been undervalued, underappreciated, and overworked. And if JJK's second season gets halted because the animators walk away from the project, you bet your sweet ass I will not be yelling at them. I will be yelling at the system system that MAPPA set up to force these animators into a situation that they knew was almost impossible to complete. Because these are not lazy animators. You could not survive a week in their shoes. I know I couldn't, and those animators who have given us one of the greatest seasons of anime do not deserve any hate whatsoever. In fact, they deserve praise for their bravery, because all workers deserve a livable wage and livable work hours. So cast your stone at MAPPA's top brass. Now, as to what I believe is going to happen with Season 2 of JJK, well, I believe that Season 2 of JJK is going to undergo a hiatus. Whether that be before or after episode 17, it doesn't really matter. And I believe that JJK's second season will not continue to air until MAPPA comes into agreement with its animators and directors to drastically improve their work-life balance. Now, do I believe that this will spell the end for MAPPA? Probably not. Obviously, as an American who's galvanized by the ideologies of making sure that workers have rights, this kind of thing is going to piss me off. My opinion as an American really doesn't mean all that much to MAPPA. What matters is the public perception in Japan, which I have no idea about. But you can bet your bottom dollar that if what's happening at MAPPA starts a revolution of animators demanding that their animation studios give them a better work-life balance and better pay, that I'll be right there with them on the picket line. Now, unfortunately, I feel as though I would be one of the only anime YouTubers to do this, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Because boy oh boy, were a lot of nerddom YouTubers still absolutely promoting struck works during the SAG-AFTRA strike. You know how badly I wanted to talk about the live-action One Piece show? It was incredible, and I wanted to do an episode-by-episode breakdown of it, but I didn't because it was struck. But boy oh boy, did that not stop a whole bunch of you. So if you are an anime YouTuber and you're not talking about this kind of thing, what exactly are we doing here? We both know that if you do anything around the numbers that I do, you can survive a strike. In fact, I would just convert both of my pages to travel content as I went on a worldwide vacation. Not gonna say that I'm hoping for it, but would be kind of nice. What do you guys think about what's going on at MAPPA? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. God, the concept of just being a travel YouTuber would be so nice, but then again, I would have to film myself in public, and that sounds awful.